Hi, everybody. In the previous session, we showed how to record and play a simple HTML script in the Service Manager. For that, we used as a demo the EBS, the Oracle EBS system. Specifically, we demoed how to get into the absences module and then capture the data of the absences table. In this session, I would like to dive in a little bit more details to the recording script, to the recorded commands, to get better understanding of these commands. As you can see here in this script that we use to capture the absences, the table data, all the commands have a very similar, almost identical structure. Each command starts with the name of the command, of course, which describes the command, open, type, assert title, and then it has up to 2 parameters that is needed to carry its manipulation. And some of the commands have only 1 parameter, some have 2 parameters. How can we know what are the parameters for each command and the meaning of each parameter for each command? For that, we have the documentation down here on the Service Manager reference tab. Once we are focused on specific command, we can see its documentation down here. So for the open command, we can see that it has only 1 parameter, the URL parameter. This command navigates to a different location and the URL specifies where to navigate to. If we will focus on the type command, we will see that it has 2 parameters. The first one is the locator. The locator is the parameter that instructs the player how to find the element on the DOM, the input field that we want to type the value inside it. And the next parameter will be the value itself that we want to type in. So each command has its own parameters, and the reference tab will explain to us what are those parameters for each command. I would like to focus on one of the parameters. Here's the locator parameter. This parameter is a very important parameter. And we will find it in many commands because most of the commands needs to first find the elements that we want to manipulate and then do something. So let's dive in a little bit into this locator parameter. And for working with the locator parameter, we have very useful buttons here, these 2 buttons. If we already have the command in our script, we can use the find button to locate the element on the page. You can see it highlighted, this list of values that we are using here. And if we are creating a new command, like let's say that we are adding now the select command, and we want to specify on which field to do the select command, we can just use the select button and go and point to this field, and the IDE will suggest what would be the locator for us. And I want to emphasize that it suggests because we have many options that we can use for finding an element in the DOM. And if we will open the list here, the IDE will also supply for us several options for using, for finding a locator for this element. And why we need several options? Because our interest is to find the best, the most stable locator for each element, something that will not change when the application is updated. So in most cases, the ID attribute would be a very good locator because the ID usually uniquely identifies an element and it is a stable attribute. But in some cases, there are systems where the ID is generated dynamically. And if it is generated dynamically, that it becomes a very bad locator because it will change on each run of the application, so we can't use it. For those cases, we have other options here. We can locate by the name, which is a different attribute for this element, by the CSS class. We can use XPath query to find the element. XPath is a method of querying and finding elements on the DOM. You can read more about it on the internet. We can try and find it by the structure of the DOM, which is not a very good option. So there are many ways to find an element, and we need to find the best one, the most stable way to find this element. This is very crucial for a stable playback. So this is the locator parameter, and we will find it in many commands. There are different types of commands that we use for recording and then playing it back. We can see some of them here. The first type is the action commands, commands that are doing something on the application, like we have seen just now. For example, the open, which navigates somewhere, the type, which inputs some values into the application, the click, which clicks a button, usually selecting list of values, and etc. So those commands will do something on the UI flow and will make some change on the application. A second type of commands is the verification commands, like this one, the assert title command. When we navigate to a new page, we will usually want to verify that we got to the right page, because if we didn't get to the right page, for example, if we go to an error page, we want to get this error as soon as possible. So it is best practice to add verification commands wherever we can to make sure that we are on the right place and we are on the UI flow that we expect to be. And all the verification commands will start with the assert. So we will have assert title, attributes, many type of assert. We will have assert element present and element not present, which are very useful. And we will use it to make sure that the flow that we recorded is actually the flow that we are actually playing back right now, so that we are on the correct page, etc. So this would be the verification commands. Another type of commands that we already seen was the output commands, all the commands that start with the store parameter. So when we want to capture outputs from specific page, we'll use a store. The store text, we'll get it from text page, but there are many store commands. We have store text, store attributes. We have a store options, store value for input fields, etc. So there are different types of store that will get us the values from the page and then expose it as output parameters for the service that we are using. Besides those types of commands, there are many other types of commands, and we will talk about them later on different sessions. We will explain them when we will explain different use cases that are using those commands. You can just stand here on an empty line, open this list of commands, and you will be able to see all the list of the commands that we support. If you want to see the documentation for all the commands, as I've shown you before, we have a full reference that explains, that shows the list of these commands and explains for each command the meaning, the parameters that we need to use for it, and the meaning of each parameter. To get to this reference, you can just add a new HTML service, then you will get this pop-up and you will find here the link which opens this reference. So this was a very quick overview on the recording playback commands. Like I've said, on the next sessions, we will demo other use cases and we will explain more command types. Thank you.